In the heart of Nigeria, nestled along the banks of the mighty Niger River, there was a village called Umuauka. It was a place where ancient traditions intertwined with modern aspirations, and it was here that a story of love, greed, and dark magic was about to unfold. Adana, a young woman known for her striking beauty, lived in Umuauka. Her intelligence shone through her sparkling eyes, and her laughter had the power to bring a smile to even the most cantankerous elder's face. However, as she stood on the brink of adulthood, Adana found herself torn between her own desires and the expectations placed upon her by others, especially her mother, Olana. "Adana," Olana would often say, her voice sharp and insistent, "you need to set your sights higher. What good is love if you can't put food on the table?" Olana frequently reminded Adana of the reason for their family's current poverty. "I married your father for love, and look where it has gotten us. I'm the one who has to take care of everyone, including your father." Olana was a woman consumed by the desire for wealth and status. She deeply regretted her decision to marry for love years ago, instead of accepting the proposal of a wealthy man who had wanted to marry her. Now she was determined not to let her daughter make the same mistake. Olana always pushed Adana to marry for money, not love, unaware that her own ambition would soon alter the course of her daughter's life forever. In Umuauka, Olana was a force to be reckoned with. Her hands were calloused from years of hard work in the market, where she sold everything from yams to palm oil. Every morning, the sound of her pounding cassava echoed throughout the village. Olana's substantial earnings allowed her to be the primary breadwinner for the family. She had fought tooth and nail to escape poverty, and now her dreams were filled with thoughts of wealth and importance. On the other hand, Adana's father, Namdi, was a diligent farmer who labored in the fields of wealthier landowners. Despite his hard work, Namdi's earnings were meager compared to Olana's income. This disparity in their financial contributions led to an imbalance in the family's power dynamics, with Namdi having little say in family matters. Whenever he tried to voice his opinion, Olana would silence him and question his contribution to the family. As a result, Namdi often chose to remain quiet whenever an issue arose. In the midst of the growing tension within Adana's family, her heart belonged to Ikenna, a young man who was learning the art of pottery. Ikenna's hands, strong yet gentle, could shape clay into the most beautiful creations. When he smiled at Adana, she felt as if the sun itself had descended to warm her very soul. However, this budding romance was far from what Adana's mother, Olana, wanted for her daughter. Olana was determined to find a wealthy husband for Adana, someone who could lift their family out of poverty and provide them with a life of abundance. She fiercely opposed the relationship between her daughter and Ikenna, believing that a poor man would never be good enough for Adana. Olana failed to realize that one's destiny is not set in stone, and that a person's financial situation could change for the better with time and hard work. One day, Olana attended a women's meeting where she witnessed other women flaunting their wealth, adorned in cowries and gold jewelry. She couldn't help but compare her own life to theirs, wishing that she could attain the same level of status and prosperity. Olana's attention was particularly drawn to a woman who had once been even poorer than herself, but had managed to turn her fortunes around after her daughter married a wealthy man. Rumors circulated that this wealthy son-in-law was a practitioner of dark arts and that he sought to marry virgin girls every 3 years, adding to his already impressive collection of 8 wives. It was said that with each new wife, his wealth grew exponentially. The woman's daughter, who was about to marry this man, was only 3 years older than Adana. This revelation made Olana even more determined to secure a similar future for her own daughter. As the meeting came to an end, Olana made a solemn vow to herself that she would do everything in her power to ensure that Adana married a rich man. She promised that she would fight against any poor suitor who dared to come close to her daughter, keeping Adana available for the wealthy man who could change their lives. On her way home from the meeting, Olana spotted Adana and Ikenna on a date, holding each other close, their love evident for all to see. Anger and frustration boiled within her as she approached the couple. "Adana," she yelled, "didn't I warn you to stay away from poor men and focus on a brighter future? Didn't I tell you that you will marry a rich husband?" Adana, her own frustration mounting, spoke up in defense of her love. Ikenna is a hard-working man. He may not be rich now, but he has the potential to be successful. Olanna scoffed at her daughter's words. What do you know about love? What do you know about life? I married your father out of love, and look where it got me. I'm the one who has to feed this family, provide for everyone, and work tirelessly day in and day out. She thrust her calloused hands towards Adana. Look at my palms, child. See the hardship and suffering that has made them so rough. Is that the life you want for yourself? Adana remained silent, her eyes cast downward as her mother continued her tirade. Have you forgotten how we wake up at the crack of dawn while others are still asleep, to pound cassava and sell it, just to put food on the table? Olanna's voice was razor-sharp with anger and resentment. She then turned her attention to Ikenna, her eyes narrowing. Listen to me, boy. This better be the first and last time I see you with my daughter. If I catch you with her again, I'll skin you alive, and you won't live to tell the tale. Ikenna, seeing the fury in Olanna's eyes, quickly took his leave, not wanting to further provoke her wrath. Olanna grabbed Adana's hand and pulled her towards home, her grip tight and unyielding. Once they were inside, she sat her daughter down and delivered a stern warning. You are not to be seen with that good-for-nothing boy ever again. Do you understand me? As time passed, Olanna's desperation for wealth and status consumed her every waking thought. Despite the success of her market stall, she yearned for more money, more respect, and more power. She was determined to achieve her goals, no matter the cost. At every village celebration, Olanna would watch the wealthy women with a mixture of envy and determination. They glided through the crowd, resplendent in their expensive clothes and glittering gold jewelry, commanding the attention and admiration of all who saw them. Leaning close to Adana, Olanna would whisper fiercely, "Do you see them, my daughter? That could be you, that could be us, if only you would listen to me and secure a wealthy husband." Adana, her heart torn between her love for Ikenna and her mother's relentless pressure, would nod silently, unable to find the words to express her own desires. The New Yam Festival arrived, bringing with it a whirlwind of music, dance, and celebration. The air was thick with the scent of roasted yams and the sound of drums beating out a lively rhythm. Amidst the revelry, a wealthy man named Obiora made his entrance, his presence commanding the attention of all who saw him. Obiora was a man shrouded in mystery and fear. Whispers followed him wherever he went, tales of his numerous wives who had all vanished without a trace, and the dark magic that had allegedly granted him his immense fortune. But Olanna saw none of this, her eyes blinded by the glitter of his wealth and the promise of a better life for her daughter. As Obiora's gaze fell upon Adana, who was lost in the joyous dance, Olanna's heart leapt with anticipation. She watched as Obiora approached her daughter, engaging her in conversation. Seizing the opportunity, Olanna hurried over to them, eager to make her intentions known. "Please, sir," Olanna said, her voice trembling with excitement, "my daughter is a virgin, and I have raised her well. She would make an excellent wife for a man of your stature." Adana, embarrassed by her mother's forwardness and uncomfortable under Obiora's intense gaze, excused herself and fled the festival, her heart racing with a mix of anger and confusion. Olanna called out to her, but Adana did not look back. Undeterred, Olanna turned to Obiora, her eyes shining with hope. "Please, come to our home," she insisted. "I will speak with my daughter and ensure that she understands the great honor you are bestowing upon her." Obiora, pleased by Olanna's eagerness, pressed a small fortune in cowries and gold into her hands. Olanna could scarcely believe her eyes, having never seen such wealth in her entire life. With a grateful bow, she hurried home to confront her daughter, the weight of the treasure heavy in her hands. Upon reaching their modest dwelling, Olanna found Adana sitting in the corner, her face streaked with tears. "Adana," Olanna began, her voice stern, "you must not let this opportunity slip away. Obiora is a man of great wealth and influence, and he has expressed his desire to marry you." Adana looked up at her mother, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and defiance. "But mother," she pleaded, "I do not love him. My heart belongs to Ikenna, and I cannot bear the thought of marrying an old man at my age. I am still young for that, mother." Olanna's face hardened, her patience wearing thin. "Love?" she scoffed. What good is love when you are hungry and poor? Obiora can provide for you in ways that Ikenna never could. He can give you the life I have always dreamed of for you. Adana shook her head, tears flowing anew. I cannot, mother. I will not marry a man I do not love, no matter how wealthy he may be. Olana's anger boiled over, and she grabbed Adana by the shoulders, her grip fierce. You foolish girl, she hissed. You would throw away everything I have worked for, everything I have sacrificed, for what? A penniless potter who will never be able to give you the life you deserve. Adana remained silent, her heart breaking under the weight of her mother's words. Olana released her, stepping back with a look of cold determination. You will marry Obiora, she declared, her voice leaving no room for argument. He will be coming to our home, and you will accept his proposal. If you do not, then you are no longer my daughter. With that, Olana turned and left the room, leaving Adana to her tears and the crushing realization that her life was about to change forever. In the weeks that followed Obiora's initial visit, he began to actively court Adana, showering her with expensive gifts. He would arrive at their home bearing fine cloth, jars of delectable palm wine, and even a healthy goat on one occasion. Olana could barely contain her excitement with each present, her eyes gleaming with the promise of the wealth and status she so desperately craved. Adana, however, felt only a growing sense of dread, her heart heavy with the knowledge that she was being pushed into a marriage she did not want. Adana, you must marry Obiora, Olana insisted, her voice firm and unyielding. Think of what it would mean for our family, for our future. We could finally have the life we've always dreamed of. Adana remained silent, her eyes downcast as she struggled to find the words to express her own desires. One day, feeling overwhelmed by the constant pressure from her mother and Obiora's relentless pursuit, Adana secretly slipped away to meet with Ikenna. As they sat by the stream, their favorite spot to steal precious moments together, Adana poured out her fears and concerns. Ikenna, I don't know what to do, she confessed, her voice trembling with emotion. My mother is determined to marry me off to Obiora, but my heart belongs to you. I can't bear the thought of spending my life with a man I don't love. Ikenna took her hands in his eyes filled with a desperate plea. Adana, run away with me, he begged, his voice urgent. We can start a new life somewhere else, just the two of us. We can build a future together, free from all of this pressure and expectations. Adana's heart raced at the thought, a mix of excitement and fear coursing through her veins. The idea of leaving behind her family, her home, and everything she had ever known was terrifying. Yet the prospect of marrying Obiora, of living a life devoid of love and happiness, made her feel cold and empty inside. But as she looked into Ikenna's eyes, Adana knew that she couldn't ask him to take on such a burden. Ikenna, my love, she said softly, I can't let you go through such hardship for my sake. You're still learning your craft from your master, and you're not yet ready to take on the responsibility of providing for us both. Ikenna started to protest, but Adana gently placed a finger on his lips. Please, Ikenna, I need you to focus on your training. Become the master potter I know you can be, and one day, when you have your own shop and a stable livelihood, we can be together. For now, we must hold on to hope and stay strong, no matter how difficult it may be. Ikenna's shoulders sagged, but he nodded in understanding. They held each other close, cherishing the fleeting moment of peace and love amidst the chaos that surrounded them. As the days passed, the pressure on Adana intensified. Obiora's visits became more frequent, and the gifts he brought grew increasingly extravagant. Olana's encouragement morphed into outright threats, her desperation for the marriage to take place becoming more apparent with each passing day. If you don't marry Obiora, you will no longer be welcome in this house, Olana warned, her voice cold and unforgiving. I will not have a daughter who would throw away such an opportunity for a foolish notion of love. Adana's heart shattered at her mother's words, but she knew that she could not give in to the pressure. She had to find a way to stay true to herself and her love for Ikenna, no matter the cost. One night, during one of Obiora's regular visits to Adana's family, he once again proposed marriage to her. This time, however, he made it clear that it would be his final attempt. Adana, he said, his voice firm and resolute, I have asked for your hand in marriage many times now. If you reject me again, I will not return. This is the end." Adana, her heart heavy with the weight of her decision, looked Obiora in the eye and spoke the words she had been dreading. "I'm sorry, Obiora, but I cannot marry you. My heart belongs to another." Obiora's face hardened, and without another word, he turned and left. He went straight to Alana, who was eagerly awaiting news of the proposal. "Your daughter has rejected me for the last time," he said, his voice cold. "I will not marry her, for I am tired of begging." Olana's rage knew no bounds. She stormed into Adana's room, her eyes blazing with fury. "How dare you reject Obiora's proposal?" she screamed, her voice shaking with anger. "Do you have any idea what you've done? You've ruined everything." Adana cowered before her mother's wrath, tears streaming down her face. "Mother, please," she begged. "I cannot marry a man I do not love. My heart belongs to Ikenna." But Olana would not listen. She raised her hand as if to strike Adana, her voice a menacing snarl. "If you don't marry Obiora, I will disown you. You will have nothing and no one. I will cast you out onto the streets, and you will be forced to beg for scraps like a common dog." Namdi, who had been listening from the other room, rushed in to intervene. "Olana, stop this madness," he cried, placing himself between his wife and daughter. "Our daughter's happiness is worth more than all the money in the world. We cannot force her to marry someone she does not love." Olana turned on her husband, her eyes filled with contempt. "You know nothing about the world beyond your yam farm and working for wealthy people," she sneered. "Would you have our daughter scraping in the dirt like you when she could live like a queen? I was blinded when I married you, but I won't let my daughter be deceived into a life of poverty. I don't wish for her the life you have given me." Adana felt torn between her parents, her heart aching with the weight of her decision. She knew that if she refused to marry Obiora, her mother would make good on her threat to disown her. She would be left with nothing and no one, cast out from her family and her village. In a moment of despair, Adana made her choice. "I will marry Obiora," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The words tasted bitter in her mouth, but once she had spoken them, she knew there was no going back. The next day, Olana went to Obiora's house to give him the news. She marveled at the grandeur of his home, the fine furnishings and the lush gardens. Obiora offered her a drink, and they celebrated together, toasting to the upcoming wedding. They set a date, and Olana returned home, her heart swelling with pride and satisfaction. News of the impending marriage spread through the village like wildfire. Olana walked with her head held high, basking in the admiration and envy of her neighbors. But there were some who looked on with worry, whispering about Obiora's dark reputation when they thought Olana couldn't hear. As the wedding day approached, Umuauka was abuzz with activity. Obiora spared no expense in his preparations, determined to make the event the grandest celebration the village had ever seen. Livestock was slaughtered for the feast, and palm wine flowed freely as the air filled with the sounds of music and laughter. Adana sat beside Obiora, her new husband, adorned in coral beads and gold jewelry that felt more like shackles than adornments. As she surveyed the crowd, her eyes fell upon the triumphant face of her mother, the worried frown of her father, and finally the heartbroken expression of Ikenna, who stood at the edge of the gathering. As night fell and the newlyweds prepared to depart for Obiora's compound, Adana couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled deep in her bones. Upon arriving at Obiora's home, Adana was struck by the grandeur of the compound. It was a sprawling collection of buildings that showcased Obiora's immense wealth. She was given her own room, larger than her entire family's house back in Umuauka. However, as the gates closed behind them, Adana couldn't escape the sensation that she had just entered a gilded cage. The initial days were filled with introductions and settling into her new surroundings. Obiora was attentive and kind, giving Adana a tour of his extensive property. Despite his pleasant demeanor, there was an underlying sense of unease, a feeling that things were not quite as they seemed. One day, Obiora led Adana to a small, dilapidated mud hut situated on the outskirts of the compound. Unlike the other well-maintained buildings, this one appeared old and neglected, with cracked walls and a roof in desperate need of repair. "Adana," Obiora said, his voice taking on a strange, almost ominous tone, "this is my private room. You must never enter it under any circumstances. Do you understand?" Adana nodded, a shiver running down her spine at the intensity of his gaze. "Yes, I understand," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. As they walked away from the hut, Adana couldn't resist glancing back over her shoulder, her curiosity piqued by the secrets that the little structure might hold. In the days that followed, Adana tried to settle into her new life as Obiora's wife. She was given a team of servants to attend to her every need, and her days were filled with learning the ways of her new household. Yet despite the luxuries that surrounded her, Adana couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness that had taken root in her heart. As days turned into weeks, Adana's unease grew with each passing moment. Despite his wealth and power, Obiora was often absent, disappearing for days at a time without any explanation of his whereabouts. And always the forbidden hut stood as a silent sentinel, a constant reminder of the secrets Adana was not privy to. One day, when Obiora finally returned home, Adana seized the opportunity to spend some time with him. Gathering her courage, she decided to ask him about his other wives. "Obiora," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "where are your other wives?" "I haven't seen them since I arrived here." Obiora's expression hardened, his eyes narrowing as he replied, "They are in my other building, Adana. Here, everyone minds their own business. You should stop asking after them." Adana's suspicions deepened, but she decided to push the thoughts aside for the time being. Weeks passed and something terrifying began to unfold. One night, as Adana was preparing to sleep, she caught sight of the forbidden hut. To her horror, she witnessed a mighty white python, half human and half snake, emerging from within. Gripped by fear, Adana quickly retreated to her own hut, her heart pounding in her chest. Little did she know that this was only the beginning of her nightmare. One particularly unsettling night, as Adana lay asleep, the enormous python appeared once again, its scales glistening like polished white stone in the moonlight. She awoke to find it watching her, its eyes reflecting the eerie glow in a way that sent shivers down her spine. Adana tried to scream for help, but it seemed as though her voice was trapped within the confines of her hut. Paralyzed by fear, she watched as the snake suddenly vanished, leaving her alone and trembling in the darkness. Desperate for answers, Adana confronted Obiora the next morning as he sat at the dining table. "Obiora," she said, her voice shaking, "I saw a snake last night. A huge white python. It was watching me as I slept. What is going on here?" Obiora's response made Adana's blood run cold. With a strange smile, he said, "The snake is family, Adana. Sister, brother, father, and wife." Adana's mind reeled as she tried to process his words. "Wife?" she repeated, disbelief and horror etched on her face. "What are you saying, Obiora? How can a snake be your wife?" Obiora's expression remained calm, almost amused by Adana's reaction. "It is the way things are here, Adana. The snake is a part of our family, and I expect you to accept it as your own kin. This is why I married you, to join our family." Shock coursed through Adana's body as she struggled to comprehend the implications of Obiora's revelation. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "You expect me to accept a snake as my sister, my brother, my husband? Obiora, this is madness." Obiora's eyes hardened, his voice taking on a stern tone. "It is not madness, Adana. It is our way of life, and you must learn to accept it. You are my wife now, and the snake is a part of that." Adana shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "No, Obiora, I can't. I won't. This is too much. I didn't agree to this when I married you." Obiora stood up, his imposing figure looming over Adana. "You agreed to be my wife, Adana. That means accepting all that comes with it. You have no choice in the matter." Adana backed away, her heart pounding in her chest. "Please, Obiora, I can't do this. I can't live like this." But Obiora's expression remained unmoved. "You will learn, Adana. You will learn to accept the snake, just as the others have. It is your duty as my wife." With those final words, Obiora turned and left the room, leaving Adana alone with her thoughts and the overwhelming fear that consumed her. Adana retreated to her room, her mind racing with the horrifying implications of Obiora's revelation. She couldn't fathom how she was expected to accept a snake as her kin, let alone as her husband. The very thought made her skin crawl and her stomach churn. As she sat on her bed, trying to make sense of her new reality, Adana's thoughts turned to the other wives. How had they endured this madness? How had they learned to live with the knowledge that their husband was not entirely human? Adana's heart ached for them, for the suffering they must have endured in silence. She wondered if they had tried to escape, to flee from this nightmare, only to be dragged back by Obiora's power and influence. Tears streamed down Adana's face as she realized the true depths of the prison she had willingly walked into. She had thought she was securing a better life for herself and her family, but instead, she had condemned herself to a fate worse than she could have ever imagined. One night, as Adana lay tossing and turning in a futile attempt to find sleep, strange noises pierced the stillness of the night. The sounds of shouting and a woman's voice, filled with fear and desperation, emanated from the private room that Obiora had strictly forbidden her to enter. Despite the terror that gripped her heart, Adana's curiosity overpowered her fear, and she found herself creeping to her window, hiding beside it to observe the unfolding scene. What she witnessed left her stunned and shaken to her core. A woman dressed in white was being led out of the forbidden mud hut, her movements slow and trance-like. But what shocked Adana even more was the sight of the familiar snake, the very same one that had haunted her dreams, slithering out alongside the mysterious woman. Adana's mind raced, recalling her husband's stern warning about the private room and the secrets it held. Everything she thought she knew about her new life seemed to crumble around her, leaving her questioning the very foundation of her marriage. Fear, cold and unrelenting, gripped Adana's heart as she watched this inexplicable event unfold before her eyes. Meanwhile, back in Umuauka, life had undergone a dramatic transformation for Adana's family. Olana, reveling in her newfound status, strutted through the village in expensive clothes, adorned with an abundance of gold jewelry. The very same women who had once looked down upon her now clamored to be her friends, eager to bask in the reflected glow of her wealth and importance. Obiora showered Adana's mother with lavish gifts, further fueling her sense of superiority and specialness. However, Namdi remained steadfast in his refusal to be swayed by the sudden influx of wealth. He adamantly refused to touch the gifts Obiora sent, his face etched with deep lines of worry for the daughter he felt he had failed to protect. "Olana," he would say, his voice heavy with sorrow and regret, "you have sold our child for money. May God forgive us both for the part we have played in her fate." But Olana, too caught up in the intoxicating rush of her new position in the village hierarchy, brushed aside his concerns, turning a deaf ear to the warnings that whispered at the edges of her mind. She threw herself into village politics, wielding her newfound influence like a weapon, swaying decisions and forging alliances with the village elders. Yet even as Olana climbed higher and higher in village society, whispers began to circulate, quiet at first, but growing louder with each passing day. People talked in hushed tones about Obiora's past wives, about the strange and unsettling way they had all vanished without a trace. Some even claimed to have seen ghostly figures, pale and ethereal, wandering the edges of his compound on the darkest of nights. But any attempt to delve deeper into these disturbing rumors was quickly silenced by Obiora's generosity. A well-timed gift here, a generous donation there, and suddenly people found their tongues stilled, their memories of the whispered stories fading like mist in the morning sun. As the months dragged on, Adana's fear grew, a constant companion that gnawed at her very being. Adana began to question her own sanity, wondering if the fear and isolation were taking their toll on her mind. Desperate thoughts of escape, of fleeing the nightmare her life had become, began to take root in her heart. But what she didn't know was that Obiora had eyes and ears everywhere, his loyal security guards positioned at every turn, making any attempt at escape a futile and dangerous endeavor. One fateful night, Obiora came to Adana, a cup of palm wine in his hand and a smile on his face that didn't quite reach his eyes. "My love," he said, his voice unusually gentle, "drink this. It is a special brew, crafted to celebrate our marriage, to help you sleep and embrace the love and happiness that we share." Adana, her mind clouded by the constant fear and the desperate desire for some small measure of comfort, took the cup from his hands and drank deeply, not realizing that this moment marked the beginning of her descent into Obiora's dark and twisted world. As the potent brew worked its way through her system, Adana felt herself slipping away, her consciousness fading as the sleeping dose Obiora had secretly added to the wine took hold. And as she lay there, helpless and vulnerable, Obiora set his plan into motion. With the help of his most trusted guard, a man whose loyalty had been bought with the promise of wealth and power, Obiora stripped Adana of her clothing. Dressing her instead in the same white garment she had seen on the mysterious woman who had emerged from the forbidden hut. Then, under the cover of darkness, they carried her limp form across the compound, her fate sealed as they crossed the threshold of the very room that had haunted her dreams and filled her with unspeakable dread. And as the door closed behind them, Adana's world faded to black, the true horror of her new life just beginning to unfold. Adana's tale serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of staying true to oneself and the perils of succumbing to external pressures. Her journey highlights the strength of the human spirit in the face of adversity, while Alana's transformation is a cautionary tale about the corrupting influence of greed. We encourage you to subscribe to our channel to stay updated on the latest episodes. Your love means the world to us, and we promise to continue delivering content that both entertains and enlightens. If you're eager to discover what happens next in Adana's story, be sure to leave a comment saying "Continue" below. We can't wait to share the next chapter of this gripping tale with you. Thank you for being a part of this journey with us. Stay tuned for episode 2, and until then, keep reflecting on the lessons we can learn from Adana's experiences. Thank you for tuning in to the first episode of our captivating story. We hope you found it both engaging and thought-provoking.